Thank you. I'm glad that Josh was able to write such a great bio for me. So I guess before I start, I will join the other brave audience member in confessing that I'm also a non-technical CEO. So most of the questions that this audience may have, I may be unable to answer, and I apologize in advance. Secondly, unlike Brian's talk, which was great in terms of useful tips and tricks and ways to actually grow your business, I think mine is going to be more a perspective on what I've seen in our industry over the last 20 years. And with that, I'll maybe just get started with a quick introduction to who I am. So I have to admit that my first job out of college was on Wall Street because, like many other people, I was really seduced 20 years ago with the world of leveraged buyouts and thought this would be the most exciting place to be. And lo and behold, I hated it, right? So I tried to learn more about business. I went to a company called Bain & Company. They do consulting, and I thought that this is where I'd really learn how to help companies grow. That wasn't exactly what I spent my time doing. Most of my time was spent figuring out how to reduce staff and increase efficiency and essentially make people work harder. So none of that did I find really all that much fun, right, to be honest. From there, I was in San Francisco, and this was a time during kind of the first big internet wave, and every other day there was a company going public, and back then, the big star was eBay. And again, back then, almost 20 years ago, technology companies were really strict in how they hired employees, and they were really smart. They knew that consultants basically knew nothing. So it was impossible for me to get a job at any technology company. So I kind of did the next best thing, which was to fake knowledge about technology, and I went and became a venture capitalist, right? So I was 25 years old, I worked in Silicon Valley, and basically my job was to meet lots of startups and figure out which ones we ought to fund. And unfortunately, we did a really bad job. We funded dumb companies like Petstore.com, which, 20 years later, Amazon actually figured out how to make a business. But I tried to learn as much as I could across those 7 years working with lots of young technology companies. And eventually I thought, why don't I try it myself? How hard could it be? I actually sat on the boards of all these software companies, and at every board meeting, the CEO would complain about, oh, we missed our sales quarters, or, hey, it's really hard to get people to work harder, and I always thought, how hard could this really be? It can't be that hard to actually build a technology company. And so I left venture capital and started to look around, and I learned more about open source then, and along the way, I found this thing called Open Ads. Right, and Open Ads turned out to be an open source ad serving project, and we kind of thought, well, could we build an interesting business around it? And the reason we thought that was because the entire world of display advertising was one incredibly confusing mess, right? So if you think about the world of search, it's really simple. You just go to one place, Google, you buy your search, you bid for your keywords, and you get traffic. The world of display was this big mess, and so we thought, could we try to remove the friction, make it easier for people to actually spend money there as well? And we got lucky, right? So we built a company around it, and that company turns out to be doing pretty well in that space. From there, that kind of really sold me on the world of open source, and I said, well, I've looked at open source for ad serving, let me apply the same formula to open source to another part of the technology industry, and I picked e-commerce. This was back in 2008. One of our developers said, hey, you should look at Magento, it looks pretty cool. I contacted the founder, who at that time basically was a design agency that had kind of built Magento on the side, and said, hey, how do we actually turn this from a free open source project into a business? And that's when I joined, and basically my job was to travel around the world and basically evangelize Magento, and that's when I started wearing company t-shirts all the time, so that's what I did. And again, in Magento, we're the one in the blue. I still say we on occasion, and Sean hates it. But when I was the we at Magento, we did a pretty good job of becoming more popular. And I think part of the reason for that was it was a perfect storm. So if you think back to 2008 and 2009, in particular, if you lived in America, big investment banks like Lehman Brothers were going bankrupt. Right? The Federal Reserve was bailing everyone out, and literally every business on earth was frightened to death about spending money anywhere. So with Magento, we had this free open source product, and we marketed the hell out of the million features that we had in this product, and it took off. And that's kind of how the business grew. And with Magento, the one thing we really focused on was growth, right? So essentially, and this is a kind of the dirty little secrets of the software industry, we let anyone be a partner, right? If you could pay us a partner fee, you became a Magento partner, right? And so we had 400 partners around the world. And what I did with those partners is I told every single one of them, if you want to stay a partner, you have to sell my software and here's your quota for this year. So all of a sudden, I had almost 1,000 people around the world helping me sell Magento. So all of a sudden, Magento really had the largest software sales force of any e-commerce company, and that did wonders for us as a company. We eventually were able to sell ourselves to eBay, and along the way, lots of merchants, right, got to hear all the great things about Magento, and I think now they're starting to realize some of the less great things about Magento. But that was kind of how we got there. After Magento, I thought, well, let's start my own company. I'm tired of working for others. Now I run a company called Jirafe. We do analytics. We actually try to help people grow their business, right? As close as we can get to literally helping you grow your business, because that's something that, ironically, most software companies don't do. So with that, right, we'll kind of talk about growth. Just quickly, if you are a small business owner that's in the retail or commerce space, can you stand up so I have a sense of what the mix looks like in the audience? Stand up, not raise your hand. Thank you. And I promise the quicker we get through this, the quicker you'll get to your beers, right? So when each of you start your business, right, and my wife has a business in the e-commerce space, she spent 3 years focused on her product. And after that, she focused on getting feedback from as many of those people using the product. And from there, she kind of started to think about sales, right? Because now she's convinced the product's perfect. She's gotten great feedback. She's thinking about sales. And me, because I don't really want to pay her to hire a systems integrator to build a big fancy website, I tell her, just go list on Etsy, right? And so that's what a lot of people do when they get started. They say, let me figure out the easiest place I can sell my product, and this is where you go. And it's great because, you know, you don't have to pay a developer. No offense to developers, but I can never figure out a good one from a bad one. And they always take more time than they need. No offense again. So this is a great alternative, right? And that's where I send my wife. I said, just put it on Etsy. Let's figure out if anyone will buy this thing. And she loved it, right? So it does great. You don't have to worry about anything, right? But lo and behold, you now have your product on Etsy, and you need to start actually building your own brand. And it's a little bit hard to print T-shirts that say ebay.com/18 letters of your product listing and try to get people to go there, right? So then you realize all of a sudden that these choices don't really work as your business grows. And I think most of you know that because you're sitting here in a Spree conference. But this is part of the challenge, right? When you're a small business, you just keep thinking, as I get bigger, it'll be easier. And of course, that's not really the case, right? So what did my wife do? And because I didn't want her to, again, I didn't want her to really go and try to figure out how to use Magento. I said, just go online, find your own solution. I've got my own business to run, so you need to run your business. So she typed in e-commerce website tools, and there were only 35 million results for her to sort from, right? So pretty simple to figure out which one to use. Some of these are pretty popular these days, right? And they seem easy-ish to use. They get you away from eBay or Etsy or Amazon. You can actually have your own URL with your brand in there, and you're starting to build your business, right? And after that, now you got to start building your marketing channels. You need to start actually building relationships with your customers. And lo and behold, soon enough, my wife came back to me and said, hey, you know, I really don't like Shopify anymore because I need to do more with my site. I don't want it to look like every other site that's also selling yoga products online. And what do I do now? And I said, I don't know. I don't really want to answer the question because I'm going to get sucked in for the next 6 months on this. So you keep working, you keep trying to build your business. You think about, how can I optimize email? Awesome. There's only about 200 different email tools you can use, right? And it just gets harder and harder. And this is the problem that our industry never really talks about. We keep kind of telling you that if you just buy this next magical software application, your life will get easier. But in fact, right, that thing that you started the business on, that product, that's now one of 10 things that you're worried about in running your business, right? So product has become the least important thing as you try to make sense of everything else. And it keeps getting worse, right? So eventually you want total control, and you say, well, how do I do that? You can go to Magento, you can go to Spree, you can go to someone else. And that could work because you actually get to decide what your site looks like. You get to pay developers. They work for you. They listen to everything you say. They deliver exactly what you asked for on time and on budget. It's a great world. Right? Awesome. Why not? And that's what we did at Magento, right? We sold that promise over and over and over again. I made that sales pitch literally thousands of times around the world, and people followed us, right? To the point where we created the world's biggest mess, right? And we kind of were the first to build this great app marketplace where we said, hey, if you're a developer, you build something, you can put it on our marketplace, you can sell it, lots of people use it. And again, that kind of continued to increase the magic behind Magento, right? There was a free or app for literally anything you ever wanted on your website. And I think most of you, if you're developers in this room, you realize that actually this is the biggest curse on earth, because every single new project you quote on, there's someone who's gone to some app marketplace and said, well, this feature only costs $19. Why are you telling me it costs $1,000, right? And you have to somehow explain to them, well, actually, that feature doesn't work to do what you exactly want it to do. Half the time you have to say, okay, we'll use some of these apps and we'll see what happens. And of course, lo and behold, that free app took 40 hours for a developer to get working on your site that you didn't get paid for. Oh, and by the way, right, in the Magento world, there's no quality control, there's no security, there's no screening, there's no testing behind the apps. We don't know if one app kills the functionality of another app. But that's the mess that you get to live with if you're the developer or the agency delivering on top of the platform, right? And then ultimately your client's coming back to you and saying, why isn't this working the way I thought it would work? And you have to explain, well, you made these choices. Again, it doesn't really ever work out to your favor. But you have clients going and also finding really helpful articles online. There's only 24 of these social media tools I need to use to make my site better, right? Same way. Only 30 e-commerce tools that are going to help you run your business. I mean, this is how ridiculous our industry is, that, right, everyone's basically marketing to your customer or to you as a business owner saying that this next magical app will all of a sudden make your business that much better. Same thing. After you've put all those apps on your site, you need to test your e-commerce site. Great, there's 23 tools to do that too, right? So it never stops, and the world just keeps getting more and more complicated. And eventually you realize that there's some challenges with using some software products, even things like Spree, potentially. I don't know, because Sean tells me it's really simple, so that's why I joined the board. But again, I think some of you are starting to realize that, you know, once you've got the site up and running, there's this thing called ongoing cost and maintenance to actually keep everything working. And again, these are things that none of us tell business owners when they're launching e-commerce sites, because as an agency, you don't really want to tell anyone about 6 months from now what the pain will be like to actually keep it running and working. So what do you do with all this, right? What are the solutions? How can you actually make sense of this? There's folks trying to help, right? So one of the biggest companies in the industry is called Adobe. They've spent billions and billions of dollars to try to put things together. Unfortunately, most of everything they've bought is for the chief marketing officer or for the online marketing channel, right? So does this really work when you go to their site and you've got 40 different products to choose from? I don't know. I think if you're a big business, some of our customers like GE, they love Adobe because every product they could ever have, they can buy at one place. But if you're not GE, if you're not a big retailer, does this make sense for you? There's others trying to kind of also attack the space, people like Salesforce. They've also spent an obscene amount of money. They've bought ExactTarget, which is the biggest email service provider in the space. Again, I don't know how many of you tried to use ExactTarget, but it's not exactly obvious how to use it and run it if you're a small to medium-sized business. So what can you do, right? This is their choices, and the more you pay, the more features, the more products you get. Another company came up a couple years ago, so we sold Magento to eBay, and we kind of had this big vision that someday there would be this incredible, magical commerce fabric layer. They bought the vision. They launched something called xCommerce. How many of you have heard of xCommerce or know about it? Or okay, so a few years ago, maybe a few more of you might have known about it, right? It died. I think the reason it died is right? They had the right idea. They kind of had this vision of it shouldn't matter what e-commerce platform you run on. All of the third-party applications that help you run your business should be easily integrated. Those APIs and connectivity shouldn't be something that you worry about. There should be someone else worried about that. It was pretty hard to get anyone else to use it apart from people on Magento, because guess what? They owned a competing e-commerce platform, and as far as I could tell, Sean wasn't that excited about helping grow Magento, so it didn't work. So who's actually doing the best job? The unfortunate reality is that the company that's doing the best job helping small and medium-sized businesses is the one that is also competing with them day in and day out, right? So Amazon, 10 years ago, you thought they were just an e-commerce company. Today, they offer everything you pretty much need as a small business to actually run an online business. And the only part they don't have yet is kind of the full shopping cart to host your own site as well. My guess is that in the next year or two, they'll buy someone like Shopify, and if that happens, they will basically have a great SaaS solution for e-commerce to run your own brand and offer everything else you could possibly need to run your business. And that's really the competition for everyone in this room, right? Because if Amazon has everything you need, all of a sudden it gets a little harder to justify $100,000 projects or all the ongoing services that you might be able to sell a customer. So, of course, there's these guys who seem to have a different solution in mind. And, again, that was part of the reason that I joined the board at Spree, because I really saw that everyone talks about bringing traffic to your site and helping you with conversion. No one actually talks about the cost of running your business. And that's why I believe that, maybe these guys are onto something. With that, I'll try to leave with a few takeaways. They will likely not be as impactful as Brian's, but number one is don't get distracted, right? So unfortunately, we live in a world where software vendors hire lots of salespeople, and we do that as well at Jirafe. We've got software partners who literally spend $10 million a year on marketing, right? And the whole point of that is to convince you as business owners and agencies that if you just buy that next magical application, your business is going to double in size. And the truth is, unfortunately, that doesn't happen as often as we'd like it to do. Second, right, kind of the same. Pardon the swear words in there, but again, software companies will promise you, everything under the sun to just get you to convince you to buy their application. When I talked to Andy at Bonobos, when they finally made the switch of moving things on to Spree, they found that they literally had 50 third-party applications integrated into the Bonobos site. Every single day for a month, they were finding 2 new vendors that somehow were integrated into Bonobos. They had no idea which ones actually did anything to increase order value, improve conversion rates, bring people back to the site, or retain customer loyalty, right? But somewhere along the way, there were all these vendors that had found ways into Bonobos to basically sell them solutions. So more than anything else, right, try to resist the hype of yet another software product. And I know that's ironic for me to say, but another one, right? Sounds really simple, try before you buy. Most software companies will tell you how easy it is to implement their solution. We do the world's best demos. I literally have customers at the end of our demo say, that was a great demo, I loved it. And we even have customers who literally email us a couple of days later saying, we've chosen to buy your solution and the price tag's 50 grand, so I'm pretty happy when I get those emails. But with our product, you can try it. You can literally go in, create an account, look at everything in the application, play around with it. If someone's trying to sell you something where you don't get access to the product before you buy, it's probably because they're either hiding how hard it is to actually work with the application, or how terrible it looks, or how terrible it feels, right? These are all the things that, unfortunately, most enterprise software companies have spent their lifetime doing. They sell with PowerPoint, you get wined and dined with fancy sales, marketing, you sign a contract, and then your team hates this product and they never use it, right? And lastly, just another variation of this, that don't believe all the pretty things we show you in presentations. Always use the product and talk to other people that use it. We've had customers who've told us that they got 3 bad references on another vendor's application and they still bought it. 3 different customers. One was Starbucks, one was American Express, another one was Gymboree. These are not small companies. these are not people who don't have really smart big procurement teams, really smart people running the business, really smart people in IT. They got terrible customer references. They still bought it. Some of them didn't even understand why they bought it, but it was just the inevitable cycle that they were in, that there was only one logical conclusion, which was, I guess we have to sign this contract just for this process to end. So anything you can do to kind of avoid the temptation to add yet another software application to make life more difficult, I tell you to do. And lastly, the thing that we found and we learned the hard way is that very rarely do companies think about building to scale, right? And when you start your business, you just think about the next logical step, and you keep believing that as you grow, it'll get easier. And the truth is that as you grow, it keeps getting harder, right? Every single person I interview, they ask me, how big of a company do you want to grow? How many people do you want to hire? And I always give them the same answer. I want to hire the least number of people possible to build the biggest company I can, right? Because the more people you have to manage, the harder it gets. Unfortunately, it's the same thing with software applications. The more of them you buy, the more of them you have to manage, the more of them your people have to learn how to use, and the harder it is to get value out of any of it. So I think that's really the end of my presentation. If you do want to buy our software, you're happy to contact me with any questions you might have about it. But that's it. Sure.
Good. All right, questions for Amit?
No? Off the hook?
Anyone? No?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.